Hello world! Patricia, O'Connor, and Frida, Reba, Darcy here today on the bonsai balcony. As you can see, as I like to say, today is one of those days worthy of the price of admission. Here goes a pair of ducks. Look, it is an update, and I've been doing a lot of updates, but it's easy to do updates at times like this because every couple of days we do have stuff to show. Other people are still experiencing, as they could say, it's Christmas here. Here it's not. Where we are at, it is in 60s, mid 60s. We're kind of used to colder, so it feels hotter. But little breeze and the temperatures are very, very nice. Our trees are continuing to green up. Frida and I have been enjoying our weekend. First, a little bit of there we go. A little show and tell on our Japanese sinensis Wisteria, white wisteria blooms. It'll continue to do that for a minute. I think there's another rack on there that I believe is going to bloom. Could be mistaken, but I thought there was. So that's one thing that I'm pretty happy to be looking at. I'm gonna we got a shipment in the other day. I came home from work on Friday, and we had a box from Ireland, and it was chock full of beautiful little bonsai pots from Elizabeth Cruttenden at Hanada Ceramics in UK. These are some of the most beautiful little bonsai pots. Her attention to detail, the cut on those feet, and they always sit very well. Her chop down there, you see her chop, there's chopped in two places there, her stamp on the inside also has two marks. Drainage holes, wiring holes in all four corners, and nice sized drain holes in the middle. Her attention to detail is just really always spot on. And this pot is carved, and it has this beautiful bead around the top, around the bottom, and even the feet have a bead around them. Fantastic looking unglazed pot. And as I like to point out, because it was pointed out to me, that unglazed pots, when you have a glazed pot, it might have some beautiful ceramic or some kind of crackledy finish or some really dynamite colors. But when you do an unglazed pot, there's nowhere to hide. It's either spot on or it's not. And her work is always just so well thought out, so well executed. And again, the part in the middle is carved, and the bead at the top and the bottom are just really, really nice little details. And then this one. Would you look at that? It looks like it would feel great because it feels great. The detail work on these feet, look how that is cut. And then again, her chop in two places, 3 wire holes, ample sized drain hole in the center, her chop in 2 places. Inside, it's a little dark. Face the light. Can we face the light on that guy? Really nice precision cuts on everything. Is just done so well on her pot, and that is absolutely beautiful. When I first saw this pot, it was in a photograph, and I said to her that it reminded me of the Rosetta Stone, the way it was carved, and that it gave a subliminal hint of something uh, very old and also kind of mysterious. I just absolutely love these. They're worth their own show, uh, and they will get their time. We'll go on about them again when they find their way, in the mix as part of our trees. And these are unglazed pots. I love, love, love unglazed pots. This one has just a hint of the carving. It has the big bead down at the bottom, and then the carving is part of the line at the top that separates it from the top of the bowl. And again, you see all of the things. You see those really sharp, well-defined lines that she does on her feet, and they're nice size so that none of them tip over. The drain holes are always ample size. The wiring holes are always nicely located. The chop marks are always very, very nice to look at, and it just shows just such an eye for detail. And there it is again, twice inside. What a beautiful, what a beautiful, what a beautiful collection of small unglazed bonsai pots. These guys will get more pines. The idea behind bonsai pots is if you have a glazed pot and it has a color to it, that gives the gardener some color to look at in winter when it's bare. When it's bare, we go with colored glazed pots. When they're pines or evergreens or conifers, we go with unglazed pots. And these colors and the way these are carved, just absolutely, to my way of thinking, go very, very well with my favorite style of trees, which is canyon trees, right? Those twisted things. This looks rugged, and at the same time looks rugged, and at the same time looks exquisite. So it's a mixture of both of those. Also, when it comes time to repot this, and we're not even close, it hadn't been in this long enough for it to even matter. But when it comes time to repot this, I will have been looking for something the right size. I'm thinking like that. I think something like that would probably be a great choice. So yeah, we're thrilled to death to have that in our bonsai pot collection, and we can't wait to get started. We're going to start repotting. We have a few trees in the wings that are ready to go in their little forever homes. And whenever we do that, we like to say that we're bringing our trees into the bonsai vortex, because once you start putting a tree in a pot that restricts its roots, from then on, its roots, its water, its feeding, everything is up to the bonsai gardener, which means it is at one state or another of bonsai, which is kind of how I look at it. And I'm not the bonsai police, but that's kind of how I roll. Okay. Simply P. Simply P is doing well, and by doing well, I mean it's making candles. It's making just a ton of buds. We're gonna let all the buds come out. We're gonna skip candle cutting on Simply P this year, and we're gonna let it flush out all of those buds, and let those just do everything they want to do. And then we'll probably select it back to a pair of buds, but we're not gonna do candle cutting this year, and we're gonna let everything grow out as long and let it photosynthesize as much as it wants, and we're gonna do everything we can do to expand our root growth next year, so that to expand our root growth for next year, which will increase our foliar density going into next year. That's kind of the idea. But right now, I can see that Simply Pea is greening up quite a bit. I'm holding off on the water because it takes longer to go through water this year. So far, this winter it kind of slowed way down. And at first I didn't, and it yellowed up. And then whenever I slowed down my watering to match its pace, it didn't get in any big hurry to green back up, which was kind of concerning to me. But it is spring now. It's switched back on. It hadn't filled up that pot yet with roots, I think, from when we did our drastic repot last year. Early last year, we chopped a big portion of that tree off, kind of cut the trunk part in half, and changed the angle from upright to out coming at us like this. So all of that used to be underneath the soil, and none of that would have existed before then. So that peat moss that's packed on there actually feels kind of dry, but it needs to dry out. Here below, it still says we're good. So yeah, I think by that we're still good. It can still get enough moisture from roots down there to keep us happy. And it's greening up, and all of those buds are pushing, or all those candles are just pushing right on out. So I'm pretty happy about that. Let me pop right on over. This is our 75-year-old cork bark Japanese black pine. It's greening up a lot. It's about time for me to rotate it and make sure that the other side is as happy as this side. I stick my head back there every so often and make sure that whatever side I'm not looking dead at still looks happy, and it does. And this guy, I can only keep saying that so many times. Everybody's greening up. Everybody's looking really good. We had a situation 2 years ago with this guy, and I'm still on the fence as to whether or not I want to do any candle cutting on it. It's a 75-year-old cork bark tree, so you don't always do the candles on those, and you can put a tree in a big situation of decline when they're elderly and they're cork bark. They're not known to be the most stable horses in the race. So I'm pretty happy with the way it looks right now. Everything's greening up and happy. We're just kind of hang with that. I don't think I'm going to do any candles on this guy. It's still going to be on You Take It Easy. We'll look at next year, and we might do we will probably look at a little bit of needle thinning when it comes time to do candle cutting on the other trees. We'll probably go through here and make sure that we've got the energy balanced on this guy. I think that would probably still be a good way to go. Our going on 20-year from seed Japanese black pine. This guy is happy, and we're just happy that it's happy, and it's in a good position. It's in a good light. It's busting out. It's got candles starting to come out. We're in the process. We're still feeding it. It's a good time to be feeding our trees. We're several weeks away from starting to pull up that biogold, because about 30 days before we do candles on trees that are in bonsai pots, we need to start picking up our fertilizers. So, or stop, if we're synthetic fertilizing, we need to stop about 30 days before. That way, every time we water, we start watering that out. And if it's like organic, then we go through and we pick up our little lumps of fertilizer, or we pick up those little golf balls with fertilizer in them, or tea bags, or whatever it is we're using. The idea is whenever we do candles, to shorten needles and shorten internode length, that we don't have a lot of nutrient banked up on the side to counteract the work we're doing. That's almost like that would be kind of like putting somebody who is an athlete on a diet, only to have your manager go in there and start smuggling candy bars in the back door. Here you go. You look hungry. We're looking at this Ponderosa pine because I love looking at this Ponderosa pine. This is a collected. This is a collected Ponderosa pine. It's a Yamadori tree. I think I really, really love this tree. I also think it's a bit sprawled out in a way that, I kind of been trying to deal with when I got it. All of this stuff was bent up here, like all of that was like arms hollering, like waving in the air. And now I've pulled all of that down. We also did some heavy styling. We bent the hoop at the top. We bent that down harder, and we compacted these limbs, and we brought these limbs down from up here to down here. So basically, all of this happened just before I shipped the tree off to go and have it overwinter someplace. That is to make sure that it gets the proper time off that it needs to cycle through. Where I live, this climate here in the Bay Area has killed a couple of my Sacculorum ponderosa before. I think the other species of ponderosa might be the reason why I see those guys at the botanical garden in Oakland, just almost right down the street from here. But I've heard they wouldn't do well, and I've kind of seen that. So I hedged my bet by letting this guy get overwintered. I further hedged my bet by, you can see the painter's tape, that day glow green you see, that's painter's tape. While it was being overwintered in Northern California, I had the garden, I asked the garden if they would put grafts on this tree. So those are Japanese black pine grafts, and I don't know how well it's going to read in the picture. I think you can see it, but most of those grafts are way farther back on those branches than the foliage that's currently growing on those branches. So in other words, when those grafts, which are Japanese black pine, when those take, we'll be able to prune the tree back. We'll be able to prune the tree back that far. I don't know how much of this other stuff I can use as gins, but some of it might make interesting gins, but I'll also have to find out if just cutting the living foliage off of it is good enough and then letting it dry out, or would I have to cut the branches off to keep them from stealing energy from our grafts. I need to find out about that, and I have time to do so. I have a list of notes on how to treat these grafts. This June, I'm supposed to open up and inspect those tiny pieces of closed up painter's tape, and when I do that, I will be exposing the wrapped up in that membrane tape, that grafting tape. I think you can maybe see one in there. And when I do, I'll be exposing those guys. We'll have a little look and see how they're doing, but also I'll put a little cut in the parafilm that they are wrapped in, which will make sure that they don't burn up in there or rot in there or whatever it is we're worried about. We're going to let a little air in and make sure the moisture gets out. At that point, also, I think I'm supposed to cover them back up to keep them from baking in the light. So that would be this June, going into summer. Leap forward a year. I think that's maybe 5 or 6 grafts. Half of those grafts will be in business. So we go into June next year, and there's, say, 3 branches of Japanese black pine on this tree that survive and are going to be doing well, because Japanese black pine that survives the graft, when it survives the graft, it tends to love being on Ponderosa. So that stuff should be taken off and doing well. So a year and a couple of months from now, a year from now, June, it's now, we're still in March, but yeah. That will be the time that I'm supposed to then act again. And what I'm supposed to do then is cut off 50% of the Ponderosa foliage. And I'm pretty sure that'll probably mean some of the dominant, when it gets a little closer to that, I can ask, I was encouraged to send notes and ask questions and stuff as we go. But that would probably mean a lot of the stuff that's above our grafts, start getting rid of those guys, and 50% of all of that would go. And then we would, and then after that, on a certain amount of time, we'll filter out more and more. I'm also looking forward to doing some sharis on this. I think some sharis. I removed some wire, and it took me a day or two to realize that whenever I handed the tree off, I said, of course, remove any wire you need to. If we decide to do work on the tree or anything. So it took me a minute to notice that they had cut loose, removed quite a bit of the heavy wire up here, which was just about to start to bite in. So that was a great move. But underneath that wire was where most of those grafts are, and I totally own it. I had looked at those sites and wondered if they would have to cut that off to graft it, or whether or not they would graft in between the strands. And the answer is they cut it off to graft it, which I'm totally, absolutely A-okay with. And so yeah. Also some of the guy wires that I had attached had been cut loose, and I kind of noticed at first, I was like, some things that were pointed up or pointed up anywhere is because I had adjusted those based on the guy wires, and when the guy wires got cut, some things that were like that, then were like this, pointed the wrong way. So a few adjustments there. I think we're okay. I had to also figure out whether or not the craftsman would have been bending branches down to further alter who is dominant and who isn't. I later decided that wasn't what was happening. What was happening was the tree was adjusted with a certain amount of guy wires on them, and when those got removed, when it sprang back, that meant that the things that were pointed up were now either pointed kind of downward, or maybe they were, because some of those guy wires pulled stuff down and some of those guy wires were pulling stuff up. So those adjustments would have been needed as per that. The deadwood features came back looking a lot more aged because of the sun exposure out there, or maybe it would have done the same right there. But I really think it's coming along and cool. And we did some work last fall where we took that hoop on the tree and squeezed it down quite a bit. To me it looks like it stayed where it was. I can't see where that moved. I've even looked at the old pictures, not that they're that old, but the 6-month-old picture that shows after we put the clamp to that, and that looks about where we put that. So all things are really, really encouraging on this tree, and I'm really looking forward to getting to do more stuff to it. If our grafts take okay, it should not ever need to be overwintered. It'll take on that Japanese black pine stock, and as our other Japanese black pines flourish here, so should this one. And that's pretty much the catch up on this Ponderosa, okay, Trident Maple. You can see that guy is flushing out just a whole lot. It's looking really happy, and it's starting to pick up speed. Everything, every little twig on there is full of buds, and that's good to see. I'm going to do a better job. I'm going to do a better job of keeping this guy raked back and keeping the soil clean of clover, free of a clover-free neighborhood. And to that end, we're waiting until this guy goes in full leaf and is pushing out all the buds, and then we're gonna do an air layer. I'm really talking that up. I'm looking forward to that. I don't think we have anything that's gonna delay this much. I want to see the tree in full leaf before I do that. But we're gonna do an air layer right here, and I see you, Chloe. Painting over at our coastal oak. God, that guy. Can you tell that guy has put on some stuff? I need to rotate this around. I think I'm missing part of the show here. But what I was looking forward to achieving this year was a fuller canopy to make up some of the gaps and some of the dead spaces we had in this tree. And it's early yet, but mission accomplished. We're getting a little over full, but we're still feeding it, and I'm not cutting anything. It can put out everything it wants to put out. It can have all the fuller energy and all that chlorophyll and all of that photosynthesis. It's really, really, really starting to push out more like this guy typically does. And this guy is pushing out just like it typically does. Speaking of, the cork bark oak is kind of due to be pinched back somewhat. These guys are all starting to elongate out. And whereas this year it's going to be hands off until fall, on the coastal oak, I'm going to let all of those branches elongate as much as they want and fatten up stuff closer to where they originated. And it'll fatten up everything along the way too, because a lot of that's going to be secondary and tertiary. Whereas this guy, all of this stuff is starting to elongate out and get longer and longer and longer and get farther and farther away from the game. And as it does, this tree has a little issue with increasing all of those internode lengths as we go. So it's a good time. Maybe it would be a good show to throw that on the table and do a little prune back. I could also turn that guy around and turn that guy around, because they've already spent a few weeks turn the other way, so we can do the hokey pokey on those guys. I don't know if you saw that yellow lights just dropped out. They're on a timer, and that's what they do. A quick look at a few ponderosas and a few pines. Those guys soaking up some sunshine and getting green. And this is our one. I'm going to do a little quick look. This is our one ponderosa that is a formal upright. And now, a quick look at all of those little. Check out all those little pines. We wired pines that were smaller than these guys. Some of these guys are getting ready to get their first chance at a little bit of wiring. And while we're here, let's look how we're doing. Let's look how we're doing with our mames. That, another one of our little Japanese black pines, and in one of Elizabeth's beautiful little pots. Those certainly go well together. I mean, coming up next, this is one of my favorite. That little pot has got some exquisite carving. We didn't remove the wire from that we put on this trunk, and the trunk is just squeezing way out. There we go. Get a load of that, huh? Is that just something? And there you can see those two candles coming out front to say hello, all forefront. We'll be clipping those guys back here in a minute, and then it will reward us by turning those two candles into a bazillion little candles, and then we'll go back through those and do the same. We made this little upright pair the other night. This is our little Japanese black pine. These two guys came up together in a seed cup, and so as long as these guys can roll together, they will roll together. Maybe, who knows, maybe they'll be together a long time. That would be awesome when that happens. It's so awesome. Let's see. Gonna come down. This guy is due a little bonsai pot. This guy is due a little bonsai pot. So we've got some material. We've got some material at our beck and call, ready to jump into the show. Last night after our live show, I watched anime, and I removed most of the wire off of this Ponderosa. I think I've got one. I think I saw late in the game where I'd left one here. Yeah, there's a piece of wire, and there's a piece of wire, and I think I have one down here. They were hard to get to. They were starting to dig in a little bit, and I didn't want to wreck anything. But yeah, this was all wrapped. This was all wrapped. That was pulled in. This limb was pulled in. Now everybody is in a state of relax, and those are all of, as you can see, our little circles held. Even after they relax, they still stay beautiful and believable. You can also see that in a way that you couldn't see last night when I was talking about how we do ponderosas. This thing is pushing out new needles, and the old needles are continuing to elongate, and that's exactly what we want to do. You can also see the reason why those are elongating. One, we're watering the tree. Two, we're feeding the tree. And what that does is that increases root growth. And what that does is that increases needle growth. And what that does is that also increases needle length. And what that does is continue to push more root growth. And then at some point, it'll start making smaller needles because it can't maintain all of those things like I just said. At some point, something will have to give, and it won't be the health of the tree because we've been watering and feeding it and making it happy. What we'll have to give is the length of the needles that it's making, because it will have put out so much foliar mass that they can't be as long as what Ponderosa needles typically are. Okay, we're gonna have a quick little love to look at our little feminine beauty. This is also a Japanese black pine, but it is our literati. Yeah, this is our literati, and it is looking really nice. We will be doing candles on this tree also. It's in a very shallow little container, and it's a really nice looking tree. I got this tree at a club auction a couple of years ago, and I've really enjoyed it. I've done almost nothing to it except candles, and the only styling I've ever done to this tree is I removed the top. It had what looked like a peacock at the top, the little plumage thing. It was stylish. It looked good. It was also Um, it was also a bar branch, so I lost it. I thought, well, we've had that. That actually added to the looks of it, I thought, but I also thought that at some point there would be a price to pay for that, and that's whenever I chopped it. Okay, gonna pan down. This is our Chinese Wisteria. It is blooming, and those blooms are really, really pretty. Oh, I can't do that. They are really pretty. Also, it's going to bloom a whole lot, y'all. All of this stuff is blooms. Some foliage, but a lot of that is blooms. So we're just getting rolling with this guy, and from the looks of it, I had been complaining a little for a couple of years now about this guy not blooming, and it is making up for that now with a vengeance. And it is just, it's going great guns, and it's good to see. It is. It's good to see. That's just when that becomes like all just multiple racks of flowers. I think that's going to be stunning. Yeah, it's going to be beautiful. I think, we've just got a lot of that to go. It's going to be doing that for a minute from the looks of it. You need a forever home, little tree. Our ponderosas that we potted up lately. I think you can see a little of what I was saying. Maybe the ruggedness of a ponderosa, and that carving of that pot, one of Elizabeth's pots. How well they go together. It's like they lend themselves together. Their colors complement one another so well. So well. All right. That is, with a final look. Oh, hello there. There you go. This is my basket of wisteria. Who knows? Maybe someday. These guys from this point on will be an ever increasing dominant fixture in the balcony. From here on out, their foliage will get longer, will get greener, will get thicker, will get fuller. A lot of times they're the first thing you see when you see my balcony, when you see me. First thing you see are these three guys. And from this point on until fall, well, especially fall, this is just going to get more green and more beautiful and more spread out. And as it branches out more, it kind of will give us a little taste of what it'll look like when they're finished. As some of that foliage, you can't always see the forest for the trees, as it were, and you can still see the base and you can still see the height. And when you've got all that green just going down in those three shapes, it's not hard to imagine where we're going. And I really like where these guys are going. But they're worth their own little weekly updates on their own. But also the little cold snap we had, I was concerned that it would turn some of our foliage purple. Foliage that turns purple, I think, is fine. It doesn't cause it to, it's a sign of cold. It's the sign of a cold snap. You can see that. You can see that on cactus. You can see that on eucalyptus trees. You can see that on bald cypress. If these things come out and get green, or if maybe a shoot is halfway out and it gets a cold snap, you'll have a half purple, half green shoot on the tree, and it'll stay that color until fall, when it all turns red. It'll all turn the same color red, but it'll never recover the same color green as that was still in the sheath or hadn't pushed out yet when the cold snap occurred. So it looked like so far this year, these guys should stay a pretty nice, even color green. And these are so easy to grow. I mean, they're so easy to grow. I put my hands on them once a year, just probably as much a matter of enjoyment as anything else. But I could just as easily let them go. As much as I cut them, I could probably let them go that much more, and maybe get there a little faster. But we're keeping them healthy, we're keeping them happy, we're keeping everything getting sunny. We're working on the right side of building branch structure early, even though we've got a lot of taper to build in these. That's going to be a single trunk going up. That one's going to be a single trunk, and this one is going to be a two trunk. And at some point, that open mouth looking thing will sew up into two cones going up into nice taper. And as per design and forethought, the front one of these two is a little smaller than the back one, or I would have cut the back one when I cut the front one to keep them even. But I thought it would be better to be able to see the front of the two towers going up. I thought it would be a little nicer if it were smaller, so that it wouldn't eclipse what's going on in the back. So, and it's not really as much as the design idea at the very start, as much as when it came time to cut that was one of two perks. And it wasn't the main one, but it was a good one. I went, also when I cut this, it'll be smaller instead of being the same size as the front one, and we'll be able to see the back one better. So that's kind of, everything is looking really good on those guys. We will cut back some of this stuff off about midsummer and let it vibricate off some more, because it grows really fast. If we chop some of our new growth back, that is our keepers, we can go ahead and get some more tertiary out of it. Otherwise, we're going to let a lot of the stuff that's going out, whether we keep it or not, let it just go ahead and go until it drops its leaves. And then we'll go back through all three trees and all four tops, and we'll select branches. Maybe a couple of the new branches this year will get to stay, but to an ever decreasing degree, that will be so. More and more and more, we'll have branches in places that we're happy with. And these guys will make their branches thicker and thicker and thicker. And at some point, the top branches will not always be as convincing, I think, once they've reached a certain point of thickness. So the way around that's quite simple. You keep a couple to replace what's happening, so that you don't end up, you can have stuff down here that gets thick because it would have been older. But even that, at some point, when that gets bigger than a cypress tree would normally have, it's not an oak, it's a cypress. So at some point, you're just like, yeah, we're going to replace that one with the one that started just above it, just below it, or just wherever 2 years before that we've already got some secondary on. And that's just, times all the way up the tree. Will never totally stop. I don't think you ever get to totally stop with cypress trees, or your tree will start to lose some of its sleek and slender and start to get a little blocky looking. I've seen designs that were a little married into their branch structure, and they didn't feel like they could swap out branches. And in the end, I think the design of the tree was compromised by being kind of locked into a niche like that. But that isn't something that you would normally see in people who do what is very popular in the States, is to do flat top bonsai. Also, just in general, people will who get a bald cypress tree or a swamp cypress sometimes also called the American red cypress. Um, they will pull up photos in the wild and see that a lot of those things in the storm zones and stuff, they tend to grow, they tend to grow flat tops. And of the older trees, then you won't see a lot of branching, just maybe sparse, sporadic, one or two branches, and then a flat top. And that will have been where the tree will have been torn to shreds, maybe by a tropical storm or something. But it had that root mass going, and it had all those resources all stored. So that same summer that it lost its top, it had no problem shooting up some 20, 30 foot long fishing pole that grows so tall that in the end it kind of starts doing that. You know, it goes way to, and then branches fan out on the top. And 5 or 6 years later, all that stuff is hardened off and thickened in that hoop shape, and you got yourself a flat top bald cypress. That is as opposed to the triangles we typically build in formal upright trees or semi-formal upright trees, or most bonsai trees for that matter. The flat top doesn't conform to that, but it is a very realistic design choice, and it is one that's not really hard to do, but does bring about some pretty satisfactory, realistic looking results. I've decided, based on a couple of things, that I'm going a different route. I saw some trees that were grown by a bonsai grower out of the New Orleans area, and his last name was Guidry, and he had one, and then I saw another tree similar to it at a site in Florida called Weigert's, and they have one in their garden that has huge buttress base and that triangular Christmas tree shape almost, except that it still has good bonsai practices. You know, you can still see the branch structure, you can still see the trunk really well. It obeys good rules of bonsai. And that's having seen some really beautiful flat tops, I decided early on that I was going to go with the more traditional bonsai step. Cypress trees are not hard to grow. I don't think this is a particularly hard tree to practice basic bonsai, you know, first branch, second branch kind of philosophy, and just trade those off. And you have more branches with a tree like that than you do with a flat top. But you do see a lot of flat tops, and I think that doing something that is kind of more in the traditional vein is almost lesser seen around here. So also at some point, if I were to change my mind, I could go back and make it a flat top in probably a couple of years. But in the meantime, we get all the development that bringing about. Also, I would probably say this: if I were planning on making these 3 trees into flat tops, they might very well still look like this at this stage of the game anyway. Because at this stage of the game, we're still trying to make a lot of taper. And we're, you know, the calendar, we're not looking at our watch looking for that to happen. We're looking for our calendar, looking for that to happen. So all of that branches stuff plays right into our evil hands when it comes to building all of that wonderful taper that we have between us and some finished bonsai trees. I believe the solution to planting those guys when it comes time might be a concrete shallow rectangle. I've kind of been thinking about that. God knows I've got a couple of years to kick it around. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. Our next drop will probably be midweek on our midweek days off. And then as per always, I'm always looking forward to our Saturday night live bonsai shows. We did a good one. I think we had a minimum of problems the other night with the show. It was about single and multi-flush pines. Yeah, I appreciate you, and Frida appreciates you, and thank you so much for watching.